Welcome to the studio, it's Vin Jelly here, and today I'm doing my own version of Don Quixote. It's really an excuse to paint a horse, but I thought it needed something a little bit more and a bit more narrative, and so I kind of had an idea playing around in my head that a more modern day reenactment of someone doing a Don Quixote might find it difficult to find windmills, and so wind turbines might be a more suitable alternative, and so I've included them as a nod to the Cervantes theme. Anyway, I started drawing it out, and once I'd worked out the composition, how I wanted it, I decided to start by wetting the whole paper and getting some kind of atmospheric background in there. And to cut a long story short, the whole painting became more about atmosphere than about subject, really, as it went along, as you'll see if you can stick with it and watch to the end. I've taken my time to keep those whites. I haven't used any masking fluid in this painting at all, so I've kept the white and highlights as white as I could and worked around them, which can be quite tricky when you're wetting pages down and splashing paint around, but I've taken care to do that and gradually built up the painting. There comes a time when you're not sure whether to make the background darker and whether to leave it light and make the contrasts in the main centre of focus more pronounced. But as I went along, I realised the background needed to be darker to accentuate the light on top of the horse and bring out its form, and that's really what the painting became about as I developed it. And it's not super detailed or anything, but the centre of focus is really the top of the horse and the knight, and the rest of it pales into almost abstraction. And whilst I've nodded to these wind turbines and done a little bit of work on the one in the bottom left, the main one, I gradually wash them away and make them mere suggestions, really, as the painting develops, as you'll see. Achieving nice darks in watercolours can always be a challenge, so I really wanted to get contrast, and in order to do that it's important to get darks. And I think if you do want to get interesting darks, it's good to have some texture. It's good to put them over the top of other colours and be patient and wait for things to dry properly before you layer on top of them. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you tend to get a muddy mess, and it's very easy to get mud when you're working with watercolours and trying to get darks. And clean darks are a real nice goal to aim at, because when they're done nicely they look rich, or can look rich like they do in oil paintings. I think you never really quite get the same depth and gloss that you get in an oil painting. I certainly can't achieve it. I think there are some people who maybe can with watercolour, and maybe it's down to the paint and the paper, but that's something I always look towards. I think my blacks tend to be a little bit lacking in life sometimes, but I don't tend to use black itself. I tend to mix up very darks with other colours, and perhaps that's a fault I need to address, and I'm trying to, I guess. So I'm trying to make this about an interesting range of colours, textures, as well as the narrative itself. But as I say, the narrative really just becomes secondary to the focal point, and it begins to look like a sort of classical painting in a way as it develops, and that's probably because of the subject matter, but also because of the chiaroscuric sort of way that it's lit. But I quite like that. It's what kind of attracted me. And here you'll see how much water is on the paper at times, and because watercolour always tends to dry a little lighter, some of these colours won't be so intense in the final finished piece. So the red, for instance, I pooled on there. I had a wet area of oranges, and then I actually dropped a great pool of red into it. But as you can see, it fades away, and as you can see, I've made the turbine on the left much more of just a suggestion of blobs of colour really, and I'm putting in some fairly fine detail here with a brush, a very small brush. Some of the hairs, I think you need certain areas of focal attraction, things that the eye are drawn to, and the rest can be filled in by the mind, and then you can enjoy the more abstract areas and the textures which watercolour can so beautifully include and create. So adding salt to damp areas of wash and bleeding colours together are things that watercolour really lends itself to, but the dreaded hard edges can look awful, so it's really a question of managing that water and keeping things damp. And here's the final reveal. I'm just tearing off the paper. I did the painting over a series of weeks around the festive season, so I couldn't work on it all the time. I was doing other things, so the masking tape became very stuck to the gum strip. As you can see, it's really taking up half the gum strip as well. And if it's like this, you need to be very careful how you peel your paper off, and it's not a good idea to do it with one hand like I was doing it while I'm filming at the same time, because you can destroy your paper and you can rip into the painting if you don't tear it away from the painting surface. I quite like this almost cinematic view slanting across from the bottom. It just made me think of the sense of movement that the painting conveys of the horse galloping past. And so here's the final result, and I hope you enjoyed it. And please like and subscribe, because if you subscribe it doesn't cost you anything, it just helps my channel grow and that more people will hopefully see the videos. So see you on the next one, folks.